Welcome to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Join us as we dive into the world of endurance sports, exploring everything from nutrition to training and how these elements shape your everyday life, both on and off the race course. Hosted by Coach Justin, certified run and triathlon coach and owner of Tabula Rasa Racing, along with Coach Katie, a registered dietitian specializing in sports nutrition and owner of Fuel to Run. We're here to share insights and real-world advice to help you thrive on your journey. Here at the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast is where your journey begins.
Hello and welcome to the Endurance Athlete Journey. This is Katie. I am actually going to be doing the intro for this episode because this is episode 2 of our 2-part series on athlete and immune system. So this episode, we're going to be focusing more on different strategies to help support the immune system. So we decided to cut this into 2 parts, kind of our part 1 and then our part 2. And so just a few housekeeping notes before we jump right in. I just wanted to let everyone know that they can email us at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com with any questions or concerns or comments or anything you want to know regarding the podcast. That's a great place to go. And if you want to get a hold of me, Katie, you can reach out to me at katie@fuel2. So Katie, the number 2, fuel2run.com. And you can email me there, or you can find my website at www.fuel2run.com. And then you can reach out to Justin at tabularasaracing.com. So you can get us there, or you can even find us. We have the Endurance Athlete Facebook group as well, the Endurance Athlete Journey Facebook group. So you can find us there if you want to get a hold of us and join our community on Facebook. So just a quick reminder there of how you can get a hold of us. But I'm going to jump right into this episode. So hope you enjoy. So I think maybe this is a good time to move on to that topic of okay, we're in January, illnesses are going around. What can you do to try to keep yourself healthy? So I'll include this in the show notes. There is a review article on, sports and immunity from the recreational to the elite. So I did get some information from that. And then there's some other stuff that, there might be some research on. Let's just start with the basics, we know for sure. So we do know that, and we'll talk a little bit about training load too. So kind of that's what that paper is kind of talking about. But let's start with the basic things that we can do to keep ourselves healthy. So one thing obviously is just sleep. It would be, well, basic things are just trying to stay away from other people that are sick, but that's not always possible. And sometimes we don't know somebody's sick. And so another basic thing is obviously hand hygiene, just washing your hands as much as you can. So if you go to the gym, and you're touching things before you leave to go eat or whatever, try to wash your hands when you're going in and out of places, or have hand sanitizer at the very least, but just keeping your hands healthy. If you feel like you're going somewhere and you're really worried about, respiratory illnesses and things in the air, I suppose, right now at the hospital that I do some occasional work at, they were requiring everyone wear a mask, just to keep everyone healthy. So some places are doing that proactively, but, if you're that worried about it, and there's probably some controversy about that, but I would say, like I did with the airport, just, I know that's a really bad place for illness. Sure, I might look a little silly because I'm the only one wearing that kind of mask, but I didn't get sick before my marathon. So, and I had hand wipes and all sorts of things. I was one of those, I was probably look like a, what is it? What's the word for someone who's scared of getting germs?
Hypochondriac.
I had little hand wipes. I was wiping down this heat. And I was I'm not getting sick. You know what I mean? So you can, but you can't always, it's hard to always be that diligent. And there's, obviously situations if you do have little kids, it's just so hard. So you do your best. I think, like I mentioned, sleep, big one is lack of good sleep. So if you're not sleeping well, or you're, just having low sleep quality, not getting the 7 to 9 hours of sleep that are recommended. I think that's a big one that could put you at risk for getting sick, because your body needs to be able to recover and repair, especially as athletes, we train a lot. And if we're not getting that sleep, it puts our bodies in a stress situation. So That's a big one, a big fundamental thing that just helps in general with anything, and everything. Stress in general, like, that kind of puts the next big one would be stress in general. So when our body's under a lot of stress, whether it's and it doesn't have to be just from training, it could be from work or
Yeah.
from other things, and that all piles on, then the body's immune system is a little bit compromised because we're not because of cortisol and things are happening that are kind of putting our body sometimes at a heightened. What's interesting to me too is I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Justin, is sometimes when I'm under a great amount, this is happens to a little bit kind of, I don't know, when with training and things like that, but I'll be under a lot of stress, like a lot of things are going on. I may be training a lot. There's some stress and I'm like
Hmm.
just busting through it. Like I'm like getting through it. And then all of a sudden the stress, like maybe I'm taking like a recovery week from training and then the stress lightens up and I'm less stressed. Like all of a sudden, I go from a lot of stress to like a little less stress, and then that's when I get sick sometimes. So sometimes I think
Hmm.
what's weird to me is like sometimes I feel like when the body's like going, 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 it's just all it's doing everything it can to kind of survive. And then when you actually back off a little bit, that's when I get sick, which is interesting to me. I don't know
So you
if
feel
it's
like
just
it lowers its defenses when it
yeah,
doesn't
it's
feel
like
like it's under attack. So
yeah, it's not
that
like
that
it's like
makes
it's
that makes
heightened.
that makes
Yeah, like it's like heightened, it's heightened, and then all of a sudden, yeah, you're like, "Oh, okay, I can kind of breathe, and the body's like, okay, well, now,
it
I
starts to
don't know
relax, and then that's when things
if
sneak
that
through the
happens. I don't know
barrier.
if that
Yeah.
happens to you, but that happens to me. It's happened to me a lot, enough in my lifetime to wonder, there's something to that, especially if the stress is building and building. It's like the body can no longer kind of hang on, and then when you do sort of back off, it's like, okay, you're just more susceptible to it or something. So that's an interesting thing that I've
That makes sense.
experienced. But definitely stress is, both psychosocial, which means like life, relationship, physical, that kind of stuff. So any kind of stress, just keeping that in mind. And that's why I think, managing stress and or like just not like we can't get rid of it entirely, but and there's some good stress too, but just kind of making sure you're monitoring that and if you're noticing things like the HRV over a period of several days is lower and things like that that might indicate there's some additional stress of some sort, to sort of take those proactive steps to allow yourself to rest a little bit so you can start feeling better before it kind of becomes an issue and you're dragging that on for weeks and then when you finally do recover you get sick or whatever. So let's see, I'm trying to look through I think obviously there's a controversy and I don't know. I had my flu vaccine this year. I don't know if it helped. Maybe that's why I wasn't super sick. I was just mildly sick, which I don't
Yeah.
like arguably, I'm not sure. But I guess I don't want to be super sick, but it did, I had to get that. But I do think there can be for certain individuals, obviously, there's some help that can be helpful for maybe not preventing illness, but maybe preventing you from getting like very, very sick. So there's
Yeah.
always that. That's just one of those basic things that, people, immunologists will recommend. But let's get into the diet piece because I think that's where people are curious. They're like, okay, what do
Hmm.
I do? And unfortunately, there isn't any nutrition strategy or anything that's gonna like, okay, you do this supplement, you take these supplements and you're not gonna get sick at all.
Yeah.
A lot of this is just to help support our immune system. So a lot of things that I'm gonna recommend are just there to kind of help so that if you do get sick, hopefully the severity and the duration is a lot less, right? But we might not be able to prevent it. That's really has a lot to do with like our own individual immune system, what we're susceptible to. Some people have more immune susceptibility than others. Obviously, someone who's got like autoimmune disease like myself, I think sometimes I might be more susceptible because of my immune system's already kind of out of whack a little bit, or somebody who
Hmm.
obviously has some sort of immune suppressant drugs, they're going to be more susceptible. But there's all sorts of things that like influence our immune system that are kind of out of our control. So these are things that can help, but unfortunately, there's no cure, nothing that's gonna completely prevent us from getting ill. So I don't want anyone to come out of this scene like, "If I just take these supplements, I'm gonna be okay." Like, I wish it was that way, but
Yeah.
so the big thing, I think the first thing I would mention would be adequate protein intake. So and this depends a little bit. I mean, I'm looking at this, there's the Gatorade Sports Science Institute did put out something on nutrition and athlete immune health, and I'll try to include that as well. But it's just a little statement that they kind of went through all of the research and everything on immunity and what might help. And they have in here a recommendation of 1.2 to 1.7 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. So
Surprisingly
whatever,
low.
actually, whatever the new guidelines, and we talked about that for Americans, they
Yeah.
increase the protein intake. So maybe even following those guidelines of like trying to get roughly maybe like 0.7 grams per pound or something. So it just depends on what type of athlete you are and the amount of training you're doing. Endurance athletes actually need higher amounts of protein. So you might be on the higher end of that if you're an endurance athlete, which is probably the majority of the people listening here. So making sure you're eating enough protein, because protein, if you think about it, it's so important for so many things, but it's important for our immune system too, because our immune cells and the cells that kind of go in and attack the virus, or try to get rid of the virus or the bacteria or whatever's causing the illness, that's a protein. And so if we lack adequate protein, it starts to become an issue with those basic bodily, things that our body needs in order to keep us healthy. So making sure that our protein intake is adequate. So if you're under eating protein, that could put you at a little bit of a greater risk. So that would be one thing to consider. And maybe if you're not sure, I would do a little bit of logging or something for a bit to kind of see what your protein intake is, calculate it out, and kind of make those adjustments that you need to make to get more protein if needed. And we don't also want to have like an excessive amount of protein. So just kind of maybe trying to figure that out would be good. The other one that's probably helpful, I think, so this is what I would say, like on a daily basis, just to stay healthy. The protein intake is adequate. Maybe you take like a zinc. So just day to day, and we'll talk a little bit about when you start feeling sick because it might be different, but on a day-to-day basis, maybe just a basic like 15 to 20 milligram zinc picolinate or zinc. There's different formulations out there. It could be like a lozenge or one that you swallow, like a tablet. The only thing with zinc that you want to really be mindful of is if you're taking it on a daily basis, zinc and copper. So zinc and copper kind of compete to be absorbed. And sometimes when you take a lot of zinc, it can kind of offset like copper in a negative way. And we don't need a lot of copper. Like it's not a mineral we need a lot of. So we don't want to take excessive amounts of it. But sometimes you can find formulations that have like 15 milligrams of zinc, 1 milligram of, or I think it's milligram, but just to 1 milligram of copper. So just a small amount, just to kind of offset that potential interaction that zinc has with copper that can kind of cause that mineral to be less than what we need because of the way they interact. So sometimes I'll look for formulations like that, or I'll buy like a low dose zinc daily tablet that I take. And then I'll occasionally take like a copper supplement like once a week that just has a couple milligrams in it. So it's just, or maybe it's micro. I can't remember if that one's milligrams or micrograms, but anyways, it's just a small amount just to offset. So just something to keep in mind there if you're going to take a daily zinc. But I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't know if I would do that all year. Like, I don't know if I would take zinc in the summer when you don't really need it because the risk of illness is so much less. But this is just something I would maybe do in the winter time. And then the vitamin C, I do think can be helpful. Like if you just want to take, I don't know if I would do like a 1,000 milligram emergency every day, just daily when you're not sick. 500 milligram, vitamin C. The research on it's a little bit hit or miss. It's not like vitamin C is a cure all, or it's gonna, you're gonna take vitamin C every day and you're gonna keep off the illness. But our immune system, we do need vitamin C and zinc are both important. So I would just say take a low dose vitamin C, maybe like 250 to 500 milligrams a day, just to keep yourself healthy. There's nothing wrong with that. Like Justin said, you'll just pee it out if you take more than you need. It's one of those water soluble vitamins, so it will not be a big problem. And then we'll talk about what you might do if you start to feel sick. So that might be a little different. And probiotics might be helpful just in general to kind of keep our immune system healthy, to have our healthy microbiome can be helpful because it's our first defense mechanism in some cases. Especially if we have gut issues like gut related illness, our microbiome, our gut bacteria are going to be our first defense mechanism. And then there may be some benefit to taking something called N-acetylcysteine, NAC. And that is, think that the research on that is kind of interesting. And basically what that does is there's a Glutathione is like a enzyme that kind of helps with oxidative stress and like kind of is more of like an antioxidant. So that's a deep conversation to have on what that means, but
Yeah.
it helps our immune system in the way that it kind of modulates our immune system a little bit, helps immune cell function, and reduces like inflammation. So it's a good potential thing that you could take. I would say just on a daily basis. I'm not always good about taking this, but I'll sometimes take like a 500 milligram NAC. There isn't really any risk to it. If anything, it's maybe just helping my inflammation and helping my immune system. But I have implemented that, and I found that is something I was doing when I also before I got sick, or once Theo was sick, I started taking like 2 of those a day and some zinc. So maybe that's why I didn't get as sick as he did. I don't know. It's so hard to know, right? Because we don't.
Yeah.
Again, there's so many things like modulating our immune system. It's hard to know, but that's one too that you could consider would be NAC supplement. And then obviously like there's some basics here with nutrition. Like if you're under eating, like you're under fueling, this could be even, an athlete trying to lose weight. And, this is another reason why you don't want to be maybe simultaneously like training for a race and trying to lose weight, because you're putting yourself at a lot of risk for this energy deficiency in sport, this low energy availability. And when our body doesn't have the energy it needs for basic functions, the immune system is going to be one of the things that kind of gets compromised in that. So if for whatever reason you're deciding you want to under consume and you're doing so in such a way that it's severe, definitely going to impact your immune system. So making sure you're just eating enough, it doesn't have to be that if you're trying to lose weight, it's okay to be in a calorie deficit, but we don't want to be in such a deficit that we are compromising our body and our immune system. So that's one. And obviously, like the basics of healthy eating, like I talked about protein, but getting enough fruits and veggies and like those healthy things that also support our immune system with antioxidants and phytochemicals and vitamins. And, vitamin C is great to take, but I would arguably say, like, why not just eat more foods that are high in vitamin C? And that, we think of citrus fruit, but things like peppers and kiwi fruit and broccoli and strawberries. And there's a lot of foods that actually contain a lot of vitamin C that, so maybe consider, if you're someone that's like doesn't want to take all these supplements, maybe consider taking that. And, zinc is going to be in a lot of those, especially animal-based foods that we eat. So if you're eating a lot of chicken and beef and things like that, you're getting a lot of zinc too. So if you're not wanting to take supplements, just making sure you're taking in lots of those types of foods that are really going to help your immune system be healthy because they have those nutrients that are necessary. And then there is some research too on kind of along the lines of energy deficiency is, we want to be careful. Sometimes even carbohydrates can be are good for us for our immune system. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing like a low carb diet, but just keeping in mind, like it's something to think about is just carb intake, especially around activity and things like that. But you don't have to be like high carb. It's not like I'm recommending eating a bunch of carbs to keep your immune system up. It's just mostly like monitoring that intake of carbs and not being extremely under eating. And I think that's probably the basic. Oh, and then vitamin D, I didn't even mention that. I think it is helpful in the winter months to take a vitamin D supplement. It could be like 5,000 IUs. I mean, that's 10,000 is kind of excessive unless you have like a vitamin D deficiency, but just a basic, vitamin D supplement might not, I don't think there's any harm in that, especially when you're not able to get outside and be in the sun. Like arguably in the summer, I don't actually take vitamin D in the summer, but in the wintertime, I do take a daily, if I can remember it, a daily vitamin D supplement just because. And I think for most people that's the only one you don't get from food. So most people would probably benefit from like some form of vitamin D. You can even buy like ones that are droplets, like they're in like a little thing and you drop it into like your coffee in the morning or something, or into a drink, and it's just a dropper thing, so you don't have to take a tablet or anything. That would be, and there's probably chewable ones in different forms out there as well that you can take. So those would be the basics for nutrition, and we can go into what happens when you start to get sick. But do you have any added things to mention, or did I catch that?
No, I think that captures it pretty well. I do take a vitamin C and I take a vitamin D every single day, 365 for the year. I mean, to me, whether it gives me, whether it's placebo or not, or whether I need it or not, I don't really know. But the amount of money that I spend on supplements is negligible compared to what I would spend if I got sick. So, there's no harm, no foul. And like I've said before, I'm a gastric bypass patient. So I do have, some deficiencies that I have to maintain. So I take 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C every single day.
Oh, that's true, yeah. So
And,
and
you know,
zinc, like, that's one you probably should be considering as a
yeah. And so,
gastric
I mean,
bypass.
this time of year, I eat the little clementine oranges because now they're in season, and I love them. And so I probably have a way more vitamin C in me than I need. But does it really? I don't.
It was
To
just I
me,
don't
it
think it's
doesn't
gonna
really
hurt you,
matter. I
yeah,
mean,
so I don't
it
think
doesn't hurt me. So it's not like, oh, we gotta get him into the doctor's office because he's overdosed on vitamin C. But I mean, it's okay.
yeah, the only
You
ones you
know,
really have to worry about are vitamin E. Vitamin D is fat soluble, but the mechanism which it works is a little bit different. It's hard to kinda overdose. I mean, I suppose you could, but, it's vitamin, A, vitamin E, and vitamin K. Those are the 3 I would but those
yeah.
Mhm. I mean, arguably, actually, there's some interesting research at overdosing vitamin E, it could actually be well, because it's a fat soluble, actually can be kind of bad idea. So, like, those would be the only ones I would say, like, don't overly excessive amounts of those. But, the other vitamins are all water soluble, so they should just be able to be peed out most of the time, and there's very little risk of overdoing it. That being said, I wouldn't take, like, 5 grams of vitamin C every day. There's always
Yeah.
an excess the problem is, like, you say a little bit's good. Sometimes people will be like, "Well,
If
500
a little bit
milligrams
is
is good."
good, then a
I'm
lot
gonna
is
do
better.
but I
Yep.
would argue don't do that. You just take the rest in food, so take a small dose of supplement and then try to get the remainder then try to get lots of foods with those other things. So the body's just better at sort of absorbing and modulating things when it's coming from food versus, like, a high dose supplement. So, it's okay to take a supplement, but don't take a very, very high dose supplement. Just try to get those take like a 500 milligram vitamin C day to day and maybe up to maybe like a 20-25 milligram zinc day to day, and ever get get more of it from food, so you could get additional amounts from food, and then don't overdo the supplements. But when you're getting sick, that's a little bit different because you may want to increase your level of zinc, maybe vitamin C, maybe NAC. So if you are sort of taking those basic, kind of baseline supplements, and then let's say you're like, well, in my case, it was like my son was getting sick. So I'm like, okay, like it's that preemptiveness. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
I could be getting sick, but you're starting to feel it. Like, oh, I'm like starting to get tired. Things this just doesn't feel right. That's when you want to kind of start this protocol. So not only that, but like stay well hydrated. So in all this process, I think that's another thing I didn't mention is hydration is also important. It comes really important when you're sick, but as soon as you start feeling ill, making sure you're okay. I'm hydrating well, and then that's when you might want to do zinc a little bit of a heavier dose. So what I'll recommend generally is, like, twice a day, taking about or you could take it 1 all at once, but I think sometimes dosing it into 2 times will just ensure that it's gonna be absorbed a little bit better, so I would almost do anything between, like, 25 to 50 milligrams of zinc twice a day or around 75 to 100 milligrams of zinc once a day. So you up that. Only when you're getting sick, though. We don't want to take that large dose when we're not sick. So this is kind of when you're starting to feel ill. Okay, up the zinc a little bit. Take now 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram of vitamin C. So that's where the emergency could be okay. It could be something to think about. Continue with your vitamin D the way you're taking it. I don't know if I would increase that necessarily. And then the NAC, you might want to go from if you're just taking like a 500 or 600 milligram tablet or amount, you might want to then up that to two times a day. So 500 milligrams a couple times a day, up to 3 times a day when you're starting to feel ill. And there is some evidence that it may be helpful that NAC and in helping clear mucus, reduce the severity of illness. Same with zinc. There's actually some research on zinc to suggest that having a higher dose of that when you're starting to feel ill can help reduce the severity and the duration of illness. So basically, what you're just doing at this point is you're going to get sick, likely, like, right?
Yeah.
But how can we make it so that you're only sick for a week or less, versus like ongoing. Some sicknesses last weeks or kind of continue to stay on board for a lot longer than that, depending on if it's a cold versus the flu. And obviously, different illnesses have different severities and durations. Basically, that's what that protocol would implementing that protocol may help. I mean, I can't guarantee, and we'll never know how bad it would have been. It's like that's why these
Yeah.
studies are hard to do when you're like measuring these protocols and trying to see if it helps, because you're different people have like their immune systems are different, so it's hard to know, does it really reduce the severity, and we're looking into people who obviously there's so much variation. It's always hard to know and do these types of research studies, but that's what I would suggest. And then just obviously when you're feeling sick, going back to our discussion on how when
Yeah.
to train and when's a good time not, when will you not want to train, when would it be okay to train, that kind of thing. Then you're kind of assessing that at that point. And then, still obviously trying to get sleep and all the other things. But yeah, that's where I don't know. I feel like that's pretty much catching most of it. I don't think I have any other profound
No, I think
secrets
that
that
pretty
I can
much that
share on
captures it
how to
pretty
stay
well.
healthy.
I mean, I will say that I've been blessed to where I must have a really strong immune system because I don't really get sick that often. And now that I've said it, I'm probably going to get sick. So I'm going to knock on some wood right here.
Mhm.
But, I don't know if it's just because, I do work out a lot and, I take a lot of these supplements. So I don't know if that stuff is just keeping me from getting sick. Now, if I stopped doing all of that, would it change and now my immune system wouldn't be as strong as maybe it is? I don't know. Maybe some people just have stronger immune systems than others, and it's just genetics driven maybe, and it has nothing to do with, anything other
I
than
think it
that. But
does. Yeah.
I don't know. I can just say that in my own experiences, I don't get sick very often. When I do get sick, I'm a baby. And so
Right.
when I get sick, I get sick.
Yeah. So
And
you're like
so
that's like you're the opposite of me. I feel like, well, there's times I do get sick, but a lot of times I just get mildly sick.
yeah,
And
I
then
don't
it's
get the
like,
mild sickness. If I get
sorry,
if
I'm
I
gonna
get
look
hit,
up.
it's like bulldozer kind of like,
Yeah.
I've been run over by a
That's why it's
truck.
so frustrating because I'm
That's when
like,
I'm sick.
I don't know if I'd rather that, because then I know for sure, like, I cannot train. It's more of like I get these mild things and I'm like, should I run or should I not? But I did want to mention one thing before I did want to talk about exercise intensity and immune system and how that, that's something we didn't, that maybe is just interesting to know, because I think, as we all know, like if you've ran a hard race, like every time I would say the last 3 marathons I've done. Of course, that one I did go into already kinda sick, but every time I do, like, a marathon, I always end up sick on the other side of it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so intense. You're putting your body through so much excessive effort and training. So I do think there is a point probably with training that, we do become more susceptible when we're training high volumes. And so I think that's a hard thing too, because we're sort of putting ourselves in this situation that we're trying to sort of push the body into fatigue a little bit. But when we do that, we do sort of suppress our immune system. So, but exercise actually, just generally moderate exercise actually enhances immune activity. So in general, just exercising. I don't know. There isn't, this was coming from that one article I found. It was like a review article, but it didn't sort of specify what the difference is, because I think that's a hard one to say. Like, well, once you hit past this threshold, because everybody is a little bit different in because you have to have all these other things like the stress outside of training and how much you're
Yeah.
sleeping, and there's so many things that kind of play into that. But that's why it's so important when you are in those like really high intensity, like high training volume weeks, to really work on all these other basic things so that you can help to prevent, that immune system suppression that can happen. But, we do know that exercise in general is helpful for the immune system. So that's just something, that's good, but we just excessive amounts of anything and high level training is probably not good. And I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I have anything. I don't know if you have any thoughts or anything to add there, but I think we all kind of know that from experience, or at least us more experienced athletes have found
Yeah.
that to be true. Especially most people have had that experience of doing a very intense race or long race and then just getting sick within the days after because the immune system is so knocked out from that. So I don't know if I have any great tips or anything. It's just something to remember, to keep in mind when we're
I think that
training.
plays a role if you've stacked your race calendar in such a way that you're racing a
Oh, right.
lot,
Yeah,
you
that
know?
too.
And so that alludes back to the episode that we did on building a race calendar as something to consider when you start to formulate how close you want your races to be with some of these high intensity race efforts. There is going to be an impact on the immune system. So if you're trying to go from one race into another one, something to keep in mind, what are the chances of you racing at such a level in that first race to where it now compromises your immune system, and now you're going into the second race compromised. And if you've structured it in such a way that that first race was a B race and now you have that A race coming up and you're now going into your A race compromised, something to
Uh-huh.
consider on, how you want to structure your race calendar and allow sufficient time between race efforts to where you're minimizing that risk. I
Right.
can say that I've been blessed to not have that experience to where I've raced and then I've gotten sick
Well,
afterwards. At
that's good.
least nothing like stands out in my mind where I've done something like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
It's
I can
seems to happen
see,
to me a lot.
it's a common case. So
I
yeah.
mean, the New York City one where we were in the subway, that makes sense to me almost. I don't know if that's where I got it. I just feel like it's
That place is a petri dish, so you can only
I was
imagine.
like, I had to ride the subway. I was like, maybe that was a mistake, but I did get that experience. But it was I know I try to be careful with my hands, but washing things. But you know what I mean. It is a petri dish down there. But yeah, I don't know. I think you just have to be you have to be kind of aware, and even in your training schedule, just knowing, like, planning it out in such a way that you're not also simultaneously, like, planning the high volume weeks for, like, when you have a big like, you gotta be kinda careful about, oh, you have a big work project, like, or something
Yeah.
along with that, like, I think it's not just the high training volume alone, because I don't wanna scare people to be like, "Oh, I'm training and I'm gonna get sick because I have a lot of training this week and it's, pushing my body a little bit," but it's more like what is also happening in your life on top of
Yeah.
that, and do you have to make adjustments to your plan because you have too much on your plate? I don't know, it's just hard. Life is hard to figure out, and sometimes we push the limit and then we find out, "Oop, that was too much." You know what I mean? Now I'm sick, and
Well,
this year
those are valuable experiences,
yeah, yeah.
so
Yeah, it's definitely shaped me, and I definitely think I'm still learning sometimes, like, what I'm capable of or what's too much, but, um, I think now I'm a little bit more savvy about what I can do and how much I can take on in terms of stress, and that's why right now I'm taking advantage a little bit of being able to run more and train because I have a situation with I mean, obviously, having a six-year-old's a lot sometimes, but I don't work, full-time job right now. I have clients and things I see. I do some part-time stuff. I work obviously do stuff with the podcast and that, but I don't have a lot of other things piling on. So I'm like, okay, that may change in the future. I might get really busy with work stuff. I might have stuff happening that's more like focused on that. And so then, I'm not going to be able to train 70 or maybe even up to 80-mile week to run a marathon because I'll have other stuff piling on top of that. But
yeah.
now now I can do that and maybe hopefully do it in a way that doesn't cause me to get sick or injured because I don't have so much other things that I'm responsible for. I mean, still it's a lot of I feel like I don't have like no responsibility. I'm not like an elite runner who just runs and sleeps all day. That would be nice, but
That would be nice. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
but there's less. So it's like, "Okay, I'm taking advantage of this now, but I'm purely aware." So we do have to think those things through, just like, in any situation, especially when it comes to illness. So
So
that's all I
I think
got.
let's kind of wrap this up. So
Yeah.
bottom line, the takeaway that I'm getting from this is that we should eat a well-balanced diet that fuels our needs based on training volume, goals, and expectations. So tailor that. Bring in the supplements when needed in
And we
order
take it
to fill in any holes that may be
right.
present from the nutrition aspect, and also supplement stuff that the body is having to use because of your level of activity.
Mhm. That's something to think
Really
about, yeah.
become in tune with the signals that your body is giving you and less reliant on measurement from other devices, and being flexible in your training plan in terms of making adjustments based on how your body is feeling. Please, please, please. I see this so much right now. Don't go out to social media, into the Facebook groups and stuff like that. It's like, what should I do? This is how I'm feeling. These people are not. Everybody is so different, and how people's bodies react to different situations and training volumes, and what level of stress, like what Katie brought in, stress that lies outside of the training environment has a significant impact on immunity. Really.
Well, if you go on Reddit and
to
you're like, and you ask that question, I feel like you're going to get 5
you're going to
or
get
20
so
different
many
responses.
different responses that
It's going
it's going to
to
take you more effort to weed through the noise and find any kind of like tidbit of usable, actionable advice.
Believe me, I've gone on those threads before, and I'm like, whoa, this is really all over the place.
It's horrendous.
And then you don't know what anyone is and their expertise is, So
really become in tune with how your body reacts, and how your body, what the signals are that your body is sending you. So the signals that my body sends me are different than the signals that Katie's body sends her. So we may react to the similar situations in a different way, and it doesn't necessarily mean that what she's doing is right and what I'm doing is wrong, and vice versa. So really becoming in tune and being okay with being wrong and making a mistake. Being okay with pushing that envelope, and now you're just like, oh, that was too much. That's just as valuable. I would say it's more valuable of an experience than not pushing the envelope and not getting sick. Because now, if you were to do that all the time and just say, well, I feel like I'm getting sick, so I'm going to back off. You really have no actionable experience to say that worked.
Yeah, were you really getting sick?
The presence of you not getting
else?
sick doesn't necessarily mean that what you did prevented the sickness. So
it's true.
I would argue that if we go ahead and push the envelope and then we experience the sickness, that is more informative than not pushing it and not getting sick. Be okay with getting sick. It's fine. It's not going to like ruin
and sometimes
and completely
we can't
dismantle what it is that
we just can't. Like, you would have gotten sick anyway. I don't know. Like, it's not always. It's hard to know. That one training session was the one thing that pushed the envelope to the edge. Maybe you would have gotten sick anyway. It's so hard.
Yeah.
So hard to know, right? So yeah. I mean, I know when Theo was sick, I was in that situation every day. I'm like, am I getting sick? But then I feel okay, and I remember one day like doing a pretty hard workout, and I'm like, well, I feel okay. I'm just gonna go with it. I feel good today. But I could have been like, no, what if I'm getting sick? I'm not going to do this. And it was, I don't know. I can't say for sure because it wasn't until a week later, basically, that I got sick. So I don't think it was that workout that pushed it over the edge. But
less likely.
I think that's a tendency to be like, ooh, like, I don't know if I'm feeling good today. My son is sick. Like, I'm going to take it easy because I don't want to get sick. But it's like, I don't know if you feel good, if you're out there and you're get your warm up in and you're like, actually, I feel great. Like, don't just do it because we don't know, either way. And you might as well, maybe it is the thing that pushed you over the edge. But sometimes it is good, like you're saying, to figure that out. I guess can't always be cautious. Otherwise, we'd spend the whole entire majority of this time of year just like walking on eggshells or like
you'd
telling ourselves, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do the workout because I think I might be getting sick. And then all of a sudden you just don't get any work in, you're not going to get anything done with your training. Yeah. Got it. Unfortunately, that's just the like nature of the game this time of year is probably going to happen. So how are you going to take care of yourself? What are you going to do when you start to get sick to maybe help reduce the symptoms? And, that's maybe more of the important thing. So,
yeah.
All right. I think
all right, guys,
we covered it.
We're going to wrap this thing up. So this has been episode 61 and potentially episode 62.
We might make it into 2. Yeah.
Not quite sure yet, but it's either 61 or 62 or just one of them. So
combination
on illness and immunity. So we want to thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate the support that you show the podcast. Again, if you are enjoying the content that we're coming out with, please consider leaving a review and a comment. in whatever platform that you're consuming your podcast. Those are greatly appreciated. If you would like to reach out to us through the podcast, you can email us at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. There's also a feature that is in every single episode where it says send us a text. You can click on that little hyperlink and it will send us a message. You can do it that way as well. If you would like to reach out to Coach Katie for dietetic concerns or run training, you can go to fuel2run.com. If you would like to reach out to me, Coach Justin, for multi-sport or single sport coaching, but I do not do dietetics, you can go to tabulaRasaRacing.com and you can message me there. Again, thank you guys for joining us in episode 61 and potentially 62 of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I've been your host, Coach Justin, along with Coach Katie. Thank you guys again and have a good night. All right. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks. Have a good
Talk
week.
to you later.
Bye.
That wraps up today's episode of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Endurance sports have a way of teaching us patience, humility, and resilience, lessons that carry far beyond the workout. Progress in endurance sports doesn't come from shortcuts. It comes from consistency, discipline, and doing the work when it's not glamorous. Wherever you are on your endurance journey, keep trusting the process and honoring the work you put in each day. If today's episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone to help on their endurance journey. Don't forget to join the conversation on our social sites to help build and foster a community where we all learn and support one another. We'll be back with more stories and insights from Coach Justin and Katie. Until then, visit the podcast website at theenduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com for more episodes from the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Feel free to send us an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabulaRasaRacing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.